Hi everybody, welcome back to Law Hero. My name is Jen. So today we are going to talk about the professional practice course. Some people have been asking me for some general tips around approaching the professional practice courses 1 and 2, which are run by the Law Society of Ireland, and that is where you complete the first examination, second part, and first examination, third part. It's so confusing that the first examination has 3 parts because you never actually do a second or third examination. So FE, first examination, is just a very strange way of terming it. But yeah, FE1, part 1, is the entrance exam. FE2 is done after PPC 1 and FE3 is done after PPC 2, which is all very confusing, but that's just the way it is. PPC 1 and PPC 2 exams is that they are open book exams. And on first blush, this might seem to some people like the exam will actually be easier, but in fact, open book exams are much more difficult than closed book exams because you're expected to have a higher degree of knowledge because you have the knowledge there in front of you. And like I always say, knowledge of the law is not enough, its application of the law is important. Because it's an open book exam, your organisation during the exam needs to be impeccable, because when you read a question you need to be very quickly able to find what materials you need to answer that question. Now helpfully on the PPC 1 and PPC 2 you actually get an iPad. So I still have my iPad from the PPC 1 and you get to keep it, which is great. And the iPad has to be on airplane mode, but you're allowed to access the materials you have, on airplane mode. So that's great. So obviously if you are handy at creating PDFs and using control find to find a certain keyword, you'll be able to get to your materials fast, but obviously organization is key. I've seen some people in the PPC 1 and PPC 2 bring in these big cardboard boxes full of paper, and they were frantically going through the paper during the exam, which I thought was kind of silly because technology is so great these days. Why would you spend your time looking through paper, as in physical files, when you can just control and find whatever keywords you need on the iPad? So I personally wouldn't recommend printing materials because you're just going to be much slower than your counterparts who are using iPad, for example. And most of the material is given digitally, so why would you go and print it out? And it's bad for the environment. So I think just have your materials ready on the iPad and be ready to find them quickly, and I think that's what will lead to good results. The exams are on in the red cow, just like the FE1 exam, which is a problem for some people because getting there on time is quite difficult. It's quite a difficult place to get to because it's on the M50, and the best way to get to the red cow is using the Red Line Lewis, which goes from O'Connell Street. But again, getting to O'Connell Street might be difficult for some people who are on the south side. So look, I don't know why the Law Society have the exam in the red cow. Sorry, I do know. It's just very unfair, I feel like, for people, but that's completely out of our hands, isn't it? So on the PPC you are given, on the PPC 1 rather, you're given paper manuals for civil litigation, criminal litigation, business law, probate and tax, conveyancing, and landlord and tenant law. And these manuals are pretty good, albeit some of the provisions are outdated. I think they haven't been revised since 2016, although they may have revised them in the interim. These manuals are very good, but again, it can be quite taxing to look through a manual while you're trying to answer a question. So my advice is to type up the most important parts and just have them in a document, because at least then you can get to it much quicker. Those manuals are fine, but they're not amazing. And they're also quite heavy. And the tables in the red cow are very small, so you only really have room for your iPad. You don't really want to be reaching under the table for your manual or other physical pieces of paper. Like I've said in many videos, it's very, very important to be rested before the exam. The exam is extremely energy draining, and this is because you are trying to process what's being asked. You have to give extremely detailed advice. You also have to be able to quickly find the answer on the iPad, and there is the added pressure, which you didn't have in the FE1, that if you fail some of the PPC1 or PPC2 exams, your training contract may be in jeopardy with your employer. So, well, some people do have that issue in the FE1, but if you've been training in a law firm and you start to fail exams on the PPC1 and PPC2, it can be very soul destroying when everybody around you has passed and you haven't passed, and you are worried about your income being cut off. So just try and get yourself in the right mindset. Make sure you're well fed. If the exam is on in the afternoon, make sure you have a big breakfast or a big lunch. And yeah, make sure you leave enough time to get out to the Red Cow, because the traffic out there can be really bad. Okay, so the reasons people fail the PPC courses is simply because they don't understand the concepts. The tutorials that you go to at Blackhall Place are designed to help you understand what has been taught in the lectures. So in the lectures you'll get PowerPoint slides, and then the tutorial and the tutor will follow up with them, and attendance at the tutorials are mandatory. I think you can only miss like 2 out of 10, or otherwise you have to go to the Director of Education and they may tell your training solicitor, which is not ideal. And I think it is important to go to the tutorials, because that's actually where you can ask questions and understand what's actually was taught in the lectures. The lectures can be quite difficult to understand most of the time, I found anyway. If you write what is in the chapter, that is also going to be a straight fail, because the PPC, like as the name kind of suggests, professional practice, is all about applying the law in a professional manner. And it's like there's a certain standard that the examiner is looking for, and the standard is if a client came in off the street and asked you a question in one of those areas of law, that you would be able to apply the law accurately. So simply kind of blanket answering is what's going to get you a fail. I think a good idea is to use the lecture slides as kind of a benchmark as to what the examiners are looking for. I personally didn't over rely on them. I used the tutorials as the starting point, but some of the lecture slides can be quite good. In business law and in conveyancing law in particular, you will be asked to draft clauses.
Everybody, sorry, my camera died. It's just typical. Anyway, as I was saying, on the conveyancing exam and on the business law exam, you're going to have to draft some clauses. Perhaps in the business law exam it might be some terms and conditions, or it might be some clauses in a share purchase agreement or the like. Don't worry if you don't know what any of that stuff is, just check out my lawhero.eu and you'll understand better. So you very well need to have a clause bank. The other thing with the land law exam is that some of the wording is set out by statutory instrument. Timing is massive. Like in any law exam, you have to divvy out your time appropriately so you don't get caught. And in one particular, and like that's how people fail. They spend too much time on one question. Make sure you have charged your iPad rather. Make sure you have adequately addressed past exam papers, and in my ebooks I do this for you, but of course you will get some past exam papers from the lecturers at the Law Society. You will need some kind of a mental map to answer questions. We'll say, like, if it is terms and conditions of trading, which you have in business law, you will have that chapter hopefully PDF'd so you can control and find what you're looking for. We'll say if it's a severance clause, or severability clause. You go look for one of those and you know what that's about, and then you have like a clause bank and you can find it as well. So it's all about being able to find stuff quick. And then of course, read the question. Ask yourself, what is the examiner asking me? Like, what is the point of this question? And okay, I'm not going to labour the points. So they are my broad tips on the Professional Practice Course 1 and 2. I will of course be doing way more detailed videos on PPC 1 and 2. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please follow me on @LawHeroIRL on Instagram. And yeah, if you have some specific questions, please email me at info@lawhero.eu, and indeed check out my PPC page on lawhero.eu/PPC, which I'll link. Thank you very much.